Marcus Williams had been invisible for so long, he'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Every night at 6 p.m. sharp, he'd walk through the gleaming marble lobby of Pinnacle Tower with his cleaning cart, nodding politely to the executives who looked right through him. His weathered hands carried the weight of 2 jobs, 3 kids, and a mortgage that seemed to grow heavier each month. But tonight, in the suffocating darkness that had swallowed downtown Chicago whole, Marcus Williams would become the voice that guided 100 souls to safety, including the very CEO who had never bothered to learn his name. The power had died at exactly 7:42 p.m., plunging the 50-story skyscraper into absolute blackness. What started as a routine evening at the corporate headquarters after-school program became a nightmare when the backup generators failed, trapping 37 children, their teachers, and a handful of late-working executives in a building that had suddenly become a tomb of glass and steel. Marcus had been mopping the 23rd floor when the lights went out. In that first moment of disorienting silence, he thought about his own kids: 8-year-old Layla, 10-year-old Marcus Jr., and 14-year-old Destiny safely at home with their grandmother. His heart ached knowing other children weren't so fortunate tonight. The screams started almost immediately, high-pitched, terrified voices echoing up through the stairwells as 37 children realized they were trapped in a building that had suddenly become as dark as their worst nightmares. Teachers' voices cracked as they tried to maintain calm, but panic spreads faster than wildfire in complete darkness. Marcus dropped his mop and followed the sound of crying children. His cleaning cart rattled behind him as he navigated by muscle memory through hallways he'd walked for 8 years. In the darkness, his invisibility became his superpower. He knew every corner, every door, every emergency exit in this building better than the people who owned it. "Hey there, little ones," Marcus called out as he reached the 16th floor where the after-school program was held. His voice was warm molasses, steady and reassuring. "My name is Marcus, and I'm going to help you get home safe to your families." "I can't see anything," a small voice sobbed. "That's okay, baby girl. Sometimes the best way to see is with your heart, not your eyes," Marcus said, kneeling down in the darkness. "Who knows what a superhero's best tool is?" "Super strength?" a boy ventured. "Nope," their voice. "And tonight, you're all going to be superheroes with me." As Marcus began organizing the children into small groups, teaching them to hold hands and move slowly, a different kind of voice cut through the darkness from somewhere above, sharp, demanding, tinged with barely controlled panic. "This is unacceptable. Where's security? Where's maintenance? Do you know who I am?" Richard Blackstone, CEO of Pinnacle Corporation, had been working late in his corner office when the building went dark. The same man who prided himself on controlling every aspect of his empire found himself utterly helpless, fumbling through darkness with his $1,000 shoes catching on carpet edges he'd never noticed before. Down on 16, Marcus's patient voice continued weaving magic. "Okay, superheroes, we're going to play a game called Follow the Voice. I need you to listen to my words like they're golden rope, pulling you to safety." He began to sing old spirituals his grandmother had taught him, songs that had carried his ancestors through their darkest moments. His deep baritone filled the stairwell, bouncing off concrete walls and creating a beacon in the blackness. "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine," Marcus sang, and soon small voices joined in. "Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine." The children's fear began to transform into wonder. In complete darkness, they were learning to trust, to move as one organism guided by the steady rhythm of Marcus's voice. Teachers whispered in amazement as kids who had been screaming in terror moments before now giggled quietly, playing a game that was secretly a rescue. 15 floors above, Richard Blackstone stumbled down the stairwell, his phone's battery long dead, his usual commanding presence reduced to that of a lost child. That's when he heard a guitar singing floating up through the darkness like a lifeline. "Hello," Richard called out, his voice smaller than it had been in decades. "That you up there, sir?" Marcus called back. "You just follow my voice down. We're all in this together tonight." Richard had heard that voice before. Every evening for years. A polite good night, Mr. Blackstone that he'd never acknowledged. The invisible man who emptied his trash, who cleaned his office, who knew his schedule better than his own secretary. "I know you," Richard said as he finally reached the group of children. "You're Marcus Williams, sir. And right now, I'm your tour guide home." What happened next would be talked about in boardrooms and break rooms for years to come. The CEO of a Fortune 500 company, worth more than most small countries, took his place in line with 37 children, following the voice of a janitor he'd never truly seen. Marcus led them down 18 flights of stairs, his voice never wavering. He made up stories about brave knights and magical kingdoms, transformed each landing into a checkpoint in an epic adventure. When 6-year-old Emma couldn't walk anymore, Marcus carried her on his shoulders. When elderly Miss Patterson, the head teacher, stumbled, he steadied her with one strong arm while never missing a beat in his story. "Why can't I see your face?" little Tommy asked during a rest break. "Because tonight, superhero, you're learning that the most important things about a person aren't the things you can see. It's the kindness in their heart, the strength of their character, and the love in their voice." Richard found himself thinking about his own child Rena, grown now, successful, but distant. When was the last time he'd carried them? When was the last time he'd sung to them? When was the last time they'd needed him for anything more than money? 3 hours and 18 floors later, Marcus's voice guided them into the lobby where emergency responders were waiting. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness, revealing a scene that looked like a miracle. 37 children, safe and smiling, teachers, grateful and amazed. And in the middle of it all, a single father who worked 2 jobs and never complained, who had just proved that heroes don't need capes, they need character. As parents rushed in to claim their children, Richard stood in the shadows, watching Marcus hug each child goodbye. He saw mothers crying as they thanked this man who'd brought their babies home. He watched fathers shake Marcus's hand with reverence usually reserved for soldiers. "Marcus," Richard said quietly as the crowd began to thin. "Yes, sir." "Thank you, for all of us." Marcus smiled. The first time Richard had ever really looked at his face. "That's what we do for each other, Mr. Blackstone. Take care of our own." The next Monday, when Marcus walked through the marble lobby at 6 p.m. sharp, everything had changed. The nameplate on the new office door read Marcus Williams, Director of Building Safety and Emergency Preparedness. But more importantly, for the first time in 8 years, Marcus Williams was seen. Sometimes the greatest leaders emerge not from corner offices, but from quiet corners where character is built one small act of service at a time. Sometimes the most powerful voice in a crisis belongs to someone who's been waiting patiently in the shadows, ready to light the way home.